On this Burnout Extra, I'm going to go more in depth on the engine that I'm putting in my 1957 truck. The truck I have is a 1957 Ford Ranchero, and they actually made 4 different engines that can bolt directly up to that car, just like a Fairlane, just like the Fairlane and the Rancheros are very much similar. So one of the engines was a Ford 292 Y block, V8, 8-cylinder. So that's the one I chose to go with. It's actually not the highest one that you can put in. However, I felt that might have been the best choice for me. And I was actually able to get a parts engine for free as well. So like I mentioned, this is a Ford 292. This engine was actually made in 1958. However, I am going to put it in the 57 Ranchero. It will bolt up and the transmission will bolt up just fine. I mentioned it was a V8, so the power will be a little bit more than the inline 6 that actually came in the Ranchero originally. My specific Ranchero, if you search the VIN, it came with an inline 6 engine. I've never seen that engine. It wasn't sold with the car, so I decided to go with the V8 because they are more desirable. As I mentioned, I'm in the process of rebuilding it right now, and I have a parts engine. To be honest, a lot of the parts on the parts engine are not that great, but if I need to go reference something or see how something comes apart, it's perfect. And of course, I have a second set of parts if need be, or if something's cracked in mine, something like that. For the most part, I've taken apart the engine pretty much completely at this point, and everything looks good. It's actually all original. It never seems like it was ever taken apart. Down to the bearings and everything are OEM part numbers or original manufacturer part numbers. So that's good to see when you're rebuilding an engine, because that means it really hasn't been touched, and as long as it's not cracked or junk, you can reuse a good deal of the parts. So as of right now, I've used my parts washer. I got a cheap parts washer and used high percentage alcohol to pretty much remove as much grease from the parts as possible. So I've just been nose to the grindstone, cleaning them and drying them in the sun as much as I can. But like I said, I have most of the parts apart on the bench right now. Some of it definitely still needs to be cleaned, like the heads and the valve springs, things like that. But I have all the bearings laid out. And what a lot of people don't particularly like when you rebuild an engine is reusing bearings. That's definitely one thing you want to change. Normally, you would definitely change the bearings, which there are 3 types I'll go over in a second. The bearings, the plugs on the engine block, as well as possibly the piston rings. From what I've heard, those are the 3 best things to change on a normal engine rebuild. That being said, I'm on a budget. I didn't want to spend the $95 plus another $108 for the different bearing kits. So I'm just going to reuse the OEM ones I have. It's not the best choice, but it is the way I'm going to go for now. I mentioned there was 3 different types of bearings that you want to replace in the engine. The first one would be the camshaft bearing. That's the deepest in the engine, and that it helps hold the camshaft in and helps grease that. And then there's the crankshaft. Tarpey goes over that in a couple of his videos, but there are crankshaft bearings that also hold in those. And then what I would call the piston bearings, and those go on the bottom of the piston rods. Those aren't the actual names of all the bearings. If you look them up, there might be a little bit different names you have to search. However, those are the parts that they go on. So camshaft, crankshaft, and piston. But as of right now, I'm actually at a standstill with my engine. I went to take the distributor out, and as I mentioned, everything's OEM. You can see that I put a little bit of WD-40 on it, but the distributor is stuck in right now. And the distributor touches the block at 2 different points. It touches inside the block down about halfway, and that has to do with gears. With that said, where it is stuck is at the surface level up here by my finger, and that part is so corroded in there, and the metal is so stuck because it's been in there for over 40 years, and that's the part that I currently can't get out. I've tried a few different things on this distributor, and you can actually view it yourself. Tarpey and I, as well as the Burnout Show, just created a TikTok, so feel free to check us out at Burnout Show. There's a couple funny videos to do with the distributor, but as I mentioned, I've tried a few different things to try and get that out, and it looks like it's going to come down to either heating it a bunch or sawing it off in some way with a bandsaw and drilling out the hole to make it okay. But yeah, as of now, we're at a standstill. Definitely check out the TikTok if you're on there. It's pretty hilarious, and we'll definitely be posting more as well. So I highly recommend that. But until then, I have a bunch of work to do on this 1958 Ford 292 for my 57 Ford Ranchero.